Alright, welcome back to Game 10 of Lucid's 2022 tournament, where we are playing Phlegra. It is turn 60, and the war with Atlantis continues. In theory, Utgard will be joining it next turn. We finished research in Thaumaturgy, level 6. If I'm recalling correctly, this is for Wither Bones, which our tyrants can cast at least, but kind of marginal research potentially. Though we are thinking we're going to have to fight Utgard in the not too distant future, and they do create a lot of undead. We're cloud trapezing someone out, casting Breath of the Desert, I believe. I don't remember where this is. Trying to warm things up somewhere. Finally, we managed to catch somebody doing some mind hunts. Or I guess in this case, it might actually be the Astral scrying spell. And it looks like we managed to get 2 of them. I'll have to double check if this is the message. It says scrying, so I'm not sure if you see this message when they're mind hunters, or if you get a different message, but hopefully those are mind hunters we got rid of. Bringing a few yetis in. Somebody gets hit by these undead polar bears. I'm assuming they're polar bears. I suppose it's hard to tell. Oh, okay, nice. It's just one of our commanders. That's acceptable. Oh, I always forget they can fly. That's kind of terrifying. I don't think our guy's going to survive. Yeah, even though one of his bodyguards showed up. Bringing in more yetis, a little bit of reanimation. We need that underwater siege chaff. All right, this has got to be some mind hunters. This guy just caught a third one. And I'm pretty sure this is our trap, where we had 2 tyrants, and visibly there were no astral mages there. I can't imagine why you would want to scry 3 times in the same province, so I'm pretty sure we just caught 3 mind hunters, it looks like. I don't know if that's the whole battery, but that's at least going to be a reduction, just in time for Utgard to join the war. Not that mind hunt's going to be particularly useful against them. They get plenty of astral magic. We do a little bit of site searching, doesn't work out. It's probably just because we wanted those guys to hang out rather than we thought we would find any gems. Atlantis, very active with the pinging. We did set up a defense here, kind of a grab bag of stuff. I don't know. Some province defense to round out the numbers, and then like kind of super combatants. Yeah, just your typical late age Phlegran army, I suppose. I've definitely been thinking more. I have to say, I don't really like late age Phlegra, so I don't know if I'll ever play them again. But I do have some thoughts. Definitely how I'm playing them is not the best way, I think. So yeah, here we are cleaning out some barbarians. And we're wasting some gems. Nice. Phoenix power. Yeah, we're going to do our flaming arrows. This is a lot of barbarians, and we are planning on using these troops in the not too distant future. Really, barbarians? There we go. Okay, some of them are retreating at least. I think we are going to lose some infantry here, sadly. But yeah, Atlantis is moving out in this direction. I think we're going to have to abandon the throne, and we might have to fight a battle in our own territory, although I feel like Atlantis probably won't want to come into our heat dominion to fight, but I could be wrong about that. Yeah, we do lose a few infantry. Not the end of the world, but a little more important than normal since we might have to fight a battle with those guys next turn. Ugh. Yeah, I did see Atlantis is getting into some blood, I think. Yeah, and then we just, I don't know why we have some crossbowmen here. Perhaps, they were with that mounted commander who got sniped. So yeah, this is not going to go well for us. I think we're going to lose all this. Yeah, Atlantis, not normally a blood power, but clearly this Atlantis came with a plan. Well, I should be careful. Maybe late age Atlantis is a blood power, but I don't think so. So that's not great, but it's also like not the end of the world. Like one more raider. Vampire is not like that hard to deal with. It's just kind of annoying to get rid of them permanently, especially when, a major blood power can just, keep popping them out. The fact that Atlantis is having to use them to raid, they're also like pretty effective blood hunters, although pretty expensive blood hunters. But you can at least use your vampire lords to blood hunt and bring in more vampire lords. So they're a pretty good way to break into blood. But the fact that Atlantis is having to raid with them means that like we're probably not going to see a wave of vampire lords. Which is good. We would not want that. Ulm, on the other hand, they're definitely someone that could come up with a wave of vampire lords. In fact, that's kind of their thing. Vampires, that is. We do see some evidence of, blood from these Fiends of Darkness. Atlantis did not resist here. Solid raiding group, I would say. Though the Fiends of Darkness are kind of squishy. They don't have a lot of protection, as I recall. 10 protection, not the worst. Yeah, I'm not sure what these black priests are here for. I guess at priest level 2, if they run into some skelly spam, they'll help a lot for that. They might be here for the undead leadership in order to lead the demons around. But yeah, not a bad raiding group. And then we have an attack, probably also a raid. This is a bad raiding group, if I recall. Oh yeah, we've been here before. Ooh, and there's some mages here. Nice. Okay, yeah, living water, which ends up with a bunch of ice elementals. Pillar of fire, yeah, I think we're going to lose this. We are going to pop out a decent number of air elementals, but air elementals do not have any cold resistance. Yeah, somebody gets nuked by pillar of fire. Our research is also a little bit lower, and we have fewer elementals. So, Atlantis doing a good job defending. I think ultimately this just means that this province is going to go to Utgard. So, yeah, we do squish some mages, which is nice. Both mages? Yeah, armies of Atlantis are routed. So we got pretty lucky there, I would say. I think that, if our air elemental, hadn't gone for the back there and killed both of the mages and triggered a rout there, I'm pretty sure, well, I don't know, hard to say, but I think we would have lost. Pillar of Fire is pretty nasty. I mean, we do have some lightning bolts coming down, so, we invested a lot in this raiding group, so it's nice that it worked out, but could have easily gone the other way. So now diplomatically, right, this in some ways helps Atlantis. I mean, obviously not losing a bunch of stuff in a province, but this is a province that borders, one of the Atlantis Utgard border provinces. So assuming we don't lose any more provinces, Utgard now only has like a 2-province border with Atlantis. So they're kind of limited in the avenues that they can attack. Now, maybe that just triggers them to end their non-aggression pact with us. But, like I said, I think that's where it's headed anyway. So that wouldn't be the end of the world for us. And then just a ping, but I think we've pulled out here more or less. Oops, we forgot a sorceress. Or maybe we intentionally left a sorceress behind. Possibly just forgot, though. But also maybe thinking that we could get rid of a raider. Regardless, we do survive the ping, so that's nice. I'll have to double check and see if we do need to move her out. Atlantis very, very cautious in their raiding, which makes sense. Utgard also was very heavy with the pings. I think all the experienced players ping a decent amount, but I would say, for me at least in this game, a lot more scout pings than normal, just on all kinds of provinces. Like maybe too cautious? I don't know. Hard to say. Certainly I'm not doing very well in this game, so can't really talk. This is going to work out for Ulm. Just a kind of a mundane squad. I like this. I mean, this is really low investment. There's lots of things that'll beat it, but, Atlantis has been investing 1 PD in a lot of places. So, yeah, I think that's a totally reasonable force, and if it gets destroyed, no big deal. Let's see. Somebody put up the Blood Vortex Global, so we lose some people. It just randomly sucks people out of various provinces. We got hit this time. It'll switch around. Yeah, so Atlantis is looking to fight in this throne province, right? So they hit it with, I'm assuming this is Atlantis. It's almost assuredly Atlantis. So it gets hit with Woven Winter. But I think we're not going to bother trying to resist there until, Atlantis gets pulled in other directions. We'll see. We are bringing our Yetis up in that area. Yeah, and then this is where we're countering. So we'll see. Definitely thinking, long term, we definitely want to get in here. So it's probably still worthwhile to keep, dropping this spell to keep the temperature, roughly neutral. But I think it just turned to spring, if I'm recalling correctly, and we may want to wait until it's summer, and then the natural temperature scales are going to help us out a bit. We're not really in a rush to take that, although there is some danger that Micklin just snipes it. And that would be a major problem for us diplomatically. We get some extra gold from Phlegra. That's nice, considering our scales. And we find some earth gems. Hey, happy that it's not barbarian attacks. Speaking of barbarian attacks, did Atlantis get attacked by barbarians? No. A bunch of mannequins. They can probably handle this. Nah, not if they only have 1 PD. Obviously they have a lot of answers sprinkled around in their lands. It's possible that the independents ran into that, but they did not. Looks like we lose a scout in a location. This is probably worth taking a look at because this is a lot of stuff. So this is, yeah, where that sorceress, next door to that sorceress, we definitely forgot to move her because this is instant death for her, definitely. So like, yeah, this is a really serious army. It's got a bunch of their ice guard. I kind of like the griffins. I mean, griffins aren't a great summon, but like they're pretty decent. Or I guess rather, I mean, they're dangerous enough that you need to think about them, you know, and as flyers, like they can be a serious risk to a backline. So like adding some griffins in that just go in immediately, I like it. Otherwise, more or less the same stuff that we've seen, like a Soul Slate battery, plenty of crossbowmen, a few of these green lions for like some acid stuff. Let's see if these guys got some death stuff. Maybe, yeah, I actually don't know what that would be for. It's interesting that this guy's not the one that's, you know, set up with the death gems. You'd think like, you know, Wailing Winds would be pretty effective against a lot of our armies. But yeah, these guys, I guess, probably just going to be Skelly spamming. You know, maybe some water evocations as well would be kind of nasty. And then we've also got a Golden Order fellow in here. Looks like he's probably on Soul Slay duty. Yes, he's part of the Communion. So yeah, definitely on Soul Slay duty. And there's also, what is the Banelord? Yeah, Banelord Thug, great sword of sharpness. Yep, cool stuff, like anti-super combatant kind of thing. Our Tyrants would not love to bump into this guy, although I think they could probably beat him, since there's only one. But yeah, all in all, like a very serious army. We do not want to fight this anywhere that it's cold. Ideally, we fight it somewhere where it's hot. Ideally, we don't fight it at all, but considering its position, it's literally as far away from Utgard as possible and, like, you know, still inside of Atlantis' territory. So I think it's pretty likely that either us or Ulm are going to have to fight that, which is sad. We patrol out a Mictlan Scout, which we like, as well as an Atlantean Scout. We also like that. And hey, one of our Tyrants is now a hero. I swear to God, it's always unequaled obesity. I guess at least he'll have more hit points, but of course that greatly increases his fatigue, which is a big problem for super combatants or spellcasters. But it is what it is, and I'll catch you guys after the cut. Alright, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Not actually feeling particularly great about this turn. So yeah, these Tyrants are a real hassle. So like this is a location where Tyrants have been for like not even that many turns, like 2 turns, Unrest 53, you know, could be a good province, is a good province in terms of gem income, which they at least can't mess with, but gold income wise, not great. Like here's another province where Tyrants hung out for like a turn. I mean, they've been through here a few times as well. So this is probably like 3 or maybe 4 turns, and it's exchanged hands a couple of times, but this is still really high levels of unrest, you know, for normal province turnover from raiding. So again, I mean, you know, we know this. They generate a lot of unrest, but it really is pretty brutal. I think in retrospect, like setting up, you know, a tyrant pit, I guess, you know, some crappy place, right? Something like this, maybe even worse. You know, like theoretically, like this wasteland would be pretty ideal. Put a lab there so they can just hang out and research. The problem is they're not very fast and they're kind of hard to move around. I mean, okay, we could air empower this guy, but most of them, you know, they don't have any air, so empowerment would be brutal. They don't have any astral, like they don't have any magic phase mobility. They have no feet, so you know you can't put any speed boots on them. They don't move that fast in general. So if you just have one province, you know, where you're storing them, then you don't really have any flexibility. So I guess you could pick like multiple places to put them, but then you're building a bunch of labs in locations that are awful. I don't know. I will say that, you know, I think one of the problems that I've been facing, which funny enough, like I kind of had this issue in my Macone playthrough and I didn't really learn my lesson. You really, really do want those resources. So, you know, maybe you just kind of give up a few places like high resource locations, build your fort there. Hopefully the province doesn't have a lot of income and then the tyrants just hang out there. You do a bunch of patrolling with like the really cheap archers and you just need to make sure that the unrest doesn't go over 100 so you can still recruit out of your forts. Anyway, thoughts for possible future games. All this to say, we're making some attacks that, like, I'm not even thrilled about. Like, so we're going to attack into here with these tyrants, just mostly to get them out of our land. We could run into some Forgiving Fathers. You know, these guys do have their, magic resistance amulets, so hopefully they'll be okay. But I don't really think we can hold this. We're also attacking a little bit early into the underwater. I was hoping to put together someone, some Soul Slay, some Mind Hunt protection, right? This guy doesn't have any Mind Hunt protection. This stack does, at least. The fact that we hopefully just eliminated Atlantis's Mind Hunt abilities, or at least, greatly reduced them, might mean that our underwater fellow will be safe. But again, a lot of this is we really need to get these guys out of our territory. We don't really have enough siege strength. We're switching over to Pale Riders. It's going to be less siege strength, but it is more effective chaff. So we'll probably do one or maybe two casts of this and then head out. I mean, there isn't a whole lot in here. As long as we don't get knocked off by some Atlantean force, then it's okay if it's a slow siege. Otherwise, like, we are pulling back this turn, this group, which is not great. Then this is mostly so we can link up with our Wailing Winds fellow. We are also forging. We're using pretty much all of our water gems to forge, I think just 4 frost resistance rings. We already have one, so we're not really going to be able to put together communion, but we can at least protect some human mages from Murdering Winter, and I think we just kind of need to suck it up, and we're probably going to eat at least one Murdering Winter cast. We did at least, make some Yetis up here, so, we will have some siege strength at least to hopefully slowly grind our way through Raga. I was kind of hoping that this army would move out. Obviously Utgard is coming in next turn, assuming, our information on the diplomacy situation is correct, but it definitely looks that way, right? This is this, massive Utgard army, and it's just hanging out here on the border, and I imagine, right, it's going to take this throne and then probably going to head for Atlantis's capital. We'll see. They may decide that, they want Raga, right? And that's part of why we just kind of need to, this isn't going to move out, so let's just head in. So anyway, forging those rings, going to gather everybody up, move out. We'll at least have some cold resistant siege strength, and then we're going to just kind of dance around with this force, maybe catch this vampire. We did move some vampire answers out. Just air elementals. Vampires are not large. They can get trampled. They're immortal, so he'll come back. Not the best answer to be spending 4 air gems just to, bounce him back to his home. We do have a Soul Slay fellow over here, so, we'll see. And then, we're going to bounce, this force over here. Mostly, again, tyrants in it, unrest starting to climb. This is a valuable province, so let's go hang out in here for a little while, and maybe we'll catch a vampire. I imagine this army moves into this location next, so we'll probably have to bounce back here to make sure that it doesn't just walk at our capital. It does kind of look like Atlantis is just going to commit against Ulm and myself, and obviously they're not really defending this throne, and I don't even know, this is what's in their capital. Nothing, but not a whole lot. So, it does kind of look like they're hoping, to put more pressure on us, or, maybe just punish us for, not agreeing to their terms. But again, it's like to give up a bunch of territory to then go fight someone who probably not the game leader at this point, just, with the nature of the build. Marignon, I think, is put together. I know that, late age Marignon's summons are supposed to be pretty nasty, and these are definitely some of them. They're also, relatively large. So I think, Micklin, also a late game power, not as large, so it's kind of hard to say. I feel like both of these guys are in decent positions. I think Ulm is probably not quite as well off because they've taken a lot of losses in this war against Atlantis. But they're not small, and they're doing their blood stuff. So I don't think Ulm is out of this, by a long shot. So I think, Utgard has a lot of competitors, and they probably need to close this out sooner rather than later. But still, they're definitely much stronger than us, especially at this point. So yeah, giving up territory to then turn around and fight Utgard is like, well, I guess we're just going to fight these Atlantean stacks. I do not have high hopes for ultimate victory, but, we're still going to give it a shot, right? Assuming we can, grab this throne back or hold on to it. We'll be at 3 thrones. I mean, that is halfway to victory. Like, you never know. Like, the diplomacy goes our way. Marignon jumps in. Maybe we snipe a couple thrones. It's not impossible. So, of course, we're still going to try to win. But, we talked about how the plan was to kind of try to win early. We're well past that. So yeah, things not looking so great. A little concern also, right? There's a decent amount of siege strength here, and we have very little at home. We do have some PD. We're going to patrol flaming arrows. We're moving this army back out, to try to cover in case Atlantis does jump on top of this fort, because we're pushing these tyrants out, so they're not covering it anymore. Recruitment wise, we're staying away from tyrants still for a turn. It just kind of feels nice to have money to do like anything else. We have more mage recruitment. I don't think we're quite not full mage recruitment, but we're recruiting mages out of like most of our forts now, including like some useful mages as opposed to just the shackled mages. So again, I don't really know how to balance this, but it's kind of like we're already struggling to like find places to put all these tyrants, and then like once the war against Atlantis finishes one way or the other, it's not really clear to me like what we're gonna jump into next. Like, I mean, again, probably we're gonna have to fight Utgard, but you never know. Marignon may decide to get involved. Basically, it's like, well, if we have a stretch of peace, like then I really don't know what we're gonna do. Peace is not something we can really afford. We can't really afford war either. Money not really a thing we're getting anymore. We'll see. We will switch back over to tyrants at some point. Probably when we take some losses, or I don't know. Maybe everything will start going swimmingly and we'll have a bunch more money. Research wise, I don't think it's changed a whole lot. We're headed to enchantment 8. There's some useful resistances here, but nothing like particularly inspired with these research choices. I kind of think we have like most of what we need, and this is really, again, we don't really have a late game plan here, so we don't really even have the mages like to cast a lot of these late game spells here. I think that more or less covers turn 60. All right, and since it is the start of year 5, we will be taking our tour of the F keys, starting with F1, the nation overview. If I've counted this correctly, we have 29 provinces, which is probably roughly about stable. Obviously, which particular 29 provinces we are trading back and forth at the moment with Atlantis, but I think this is like ballpark accurate for where our size is. Site searching wise, I feel like not a ton has changed, maybe a bit more site searched in death. You can see that it's still somewhat lacking, as of course only our tyrants can do that, and of course almost all of our nature site searching has been done by our pretender, so definitely something to consider with Phlegra. Nature access is a little tougher in the late age, though certainly possible with independence. And then the only other thing I would say is that our water site searching and our astral site searching has been at a relatively low level, which is common for Phlegra's magic access, but potentially an argument for doing the remote site searching spells, at least in those paths. Next up, we've got the graphs. As you can see, here's the province graph. Like, we are relatively stable. We definitely, ticked up. This is probably when the war against Atlantis kicked off, but they've done a really good job fighting both myself and Ulm off. And so, we're kind of back more or less to like where we started. I feel like this is not the sign of a successful war. Let's just put it that way. Looking at the forts graph, though, right, we're not in any kind of existential threat. We don't see, we haven't lost any forts. So, if this graph starts going down, then you're in deep, deep trouble. Income, of course, is going to track fairly closely, with provinces. You can see this one does jump a bit more, and I think maybe just highlights that, not all provinces are created equal. So as, particularly valuable ones trade hands, like you see a lot more shuffle in this graph. Definitely something to keep in mind when making your attacks. Gem income, of course, similarly tied to what provinces you own, though interestingly, I feel like this is an area that we've at least improved on, though some of that may be due to our own site searching in our territory and unrelated to what we've captured in the war. Research has actually ticked up. Research is a really hard graph to analyze without seeing other people's graphs. But I feel like this one's not terrible. You can definitely see some fluctuation. There have certainly been times where we've mobilized a lot of mages. And you definitely see that reflected in the research graph. Dominion, slightly concerning. We don't particularly care. It's not like we took amazing scales. So, it's a little less important for our Dominion to be in our land. Utgard's scales are kind of rough, but otherwise, like most of our neighbors' scales aren't particularly objectionable. I suppose we don't really like Atlantis's cold Dominion. So that's pretty important. But yeah, we're definitely at the point in the game where having enemy Dominion in your territory, there are globals that can really make you suffer. So not hugely important, but the fact that it does look like it's maybe stabilized a bit and bounced back, but yeah, we lost a good amount of Dominion there for some reason. I don't really know the cause of that. Army size, I do know the cause of this. If we just ignore certain massive dips, overall this graph has gone up. And then from an ascension point standpoint, it does look like, Ulm is the highest. They were tied with Atlantis for a little bit, but it looks like Atlantis lost one out, I think potentially that was to us, and then we didn't claim it. I believe that's what happened there. Regardless, even aside from not claiming the throne that we got from Atlantis, we're in tied for second right now, but holding ascension points, holding thrones, right, that's how you win. So it is important. It's not like our position is awful, but short of that one throne on the border with Atlantis, I don't think we're in a great position to pick up any additional thrones, so I don't actually think we're that close to winning. Neither is anyone else, really. I guess with the exception potentially of Ulm, there are some thrones that they could pick up from Atlantis. So, yeah, we've talked before a little bit about how our alliance with Ulm is a little bit concerning, because it could potentially vault them into the win, but I do think it is in our best interest. Next up, we have the Hall of Fame. A lot of dead heroes, actually. Significantly more dead heroes than living ones. We do have a couple of our fellows up there. In fact, one of them's our prophet, which I can't believe he's still alive. But so he is. But we do actually have a tyrant up there, and we had a second tyrant up there who's now dead. But otherwise, this list is starting to look a little more normal. A lot fewer mercenaries, a lot more things like Scrotty. We also see an entry from Marignon here. It looks like a summon of some kind. Quite a few of Ulm's commanders, who I believe are sacred. Definitely carry Ulm's bless. So yeah, not hugely important, but always a little interesting to look at, who's making it up into the hero slots. And we have half of the players remaining, not counting our observer faction. Of those nations remaining, only ourselves and Atlantis are non-blood nations. I'm not sure how much late-age Utgard relies on blood. The Scrotty definitely can do blood hunting, but I believe they're a bit on the expensive side as far as blood hunters go, so maybe not such a big part of their gameplay, but definitely an avenue. But these other three nations, right, all Marignon, late-age Marignon, and late-age Micklin, yeah, they all do blood. So that's definitely not great, but it is the late age, so there's a lot of blood nations. Some of them are going to slip through, though in this case, most of them slip through. Really the only one we lost was Xibalba. Although, Vedheim has blood. I think Gath has blood too, and maybe Raga as well. I don't know, like I said, it's the late age. There's a lot of blood, but we have 6 factions remaining. Research, of course, we look at all the time. Nice and split, not playing a blood nation, so thankfully I didn't have to split my research into blood magic as well. We did at least make out with 1 9 for alteration, probably the most important 9. Though, of course, like everything in Dominions, it depends. But overall, we have enough research here to do things. On the other hand, the global situation, not looking great for us. All the global slots are filled. There's no nation that has 2 globals, which probably bodes well for the overall game state, right? Nobody's completely running away with things. Also of note, all of these globals are gem generators. Gem generating globals are commonly held to be, the best, most effective globals. Again, always it depends, but certainly this room appears to agree with that assessment. And here's our gem income and gem stocks, looking a little on the low side. We're sitting on the most astral pearls. We have the most water income. Overall, I would say our gem income at this point is looking okay. Again, it feels a bit on the low side, but that's because I play a lot more early age than late age. And of course, the gem type that we were most interested in, Earth, we have the least income of. But that's just how it goes, right? You cannot rely on non-capital gem income. Probably you'll get more gem income for paths that your mages can search out, but maybe not. And here's our magic gear, really kind of just a random grab back of stuff. We don't have too many things hanging out. I don't like to leave a lot of equipment in the lab. Although I will say that, maybe switching to a more like kit focused, I tend to just give gear to commanders and then, they hang on to it. Not that I don't ever pull it off, but I do think, having a couple like specific kits for specific tasks that you maybe when you're not using it, you pull it off, just put it in the lab, and then that way you can move it around more easily, mostly, as long as, the person you want to give it to has access to a lab. I do think that's a good approach, can be a good approach. But of course, any gear that you have sitting in your lab isn't really doing anything for you. So we have a little bit of kit that's going to go to a Tyrant. We have a booster that, doesn't have a home currently. We have a couple random items, one of which we probably got, the other one, the old midget masher, which we may need to use again. I like to have bows. If you're a communion nation, you can use it to prevent communion masters from burning out communions. Haven't found as much use for them since I've mostly just accepted that we're going to burn out our communions as Phlegra always. So this was just a bit reflexive where it's like, I'm a communion nation, I'm going to need some bows. And then, but still could be useful if someday we want to try to put together a Phlegran communion where we don't burn out the communion slaves. These will be useful. And then, of course, you always got to have some shoes for mobility. And here's the throne situation. 2 unclaimed thrones, though I do think they are controlled. There might be 1 neutral throne left on the map. Not too much to say here. You definitely can analyze, like some thrones are very important, or rather just a lot more useful for certain nations than others. Like Vedheim really would like to have some Earth access, so Crystal Throne would be great for them, since that gets some Earth access. Generally, any throne that allows you to recruit a mage is probably better than ones that don't. And to that point, Ulm probably has the worst thrones at the moment, because none of them allow recruitment of mages, despite them having the most thrones. But it's still nice to have all those thrones. They like the gems, and improving your scales is always an upside, assuming you didn't already take maximum scales in that area. And that concludes our tour of the F keys. We'll do it again in a year's time.